Is everyone familiar with that comic that criticized Christianity? The one that says, here is how the scientific method is done. We go and gather the facts, and then we draw our conclusions. In Christianity, it works the exact opposite. We go and make our conclusions, then we gather evidence for what supports it. Well, guess what? But not only is this here technically true for Christianity, it's also true for feminism. For example, go and take this article. Yeah, it turns out that women are better off without men because salamanders. No, seriously, that's the entire point the writer is wanting to make. And before I even go and criticize this person, let's go and just read the first two paragraphs, okay? Because by the time you're done reading the first two paragraphs, you already know this person has an agenda and their opinion isn't to be trusted. No, seriously, if you're going to go and start out with, well, this is the main idea I'm coming out with, and here's the facts that supports why I'm right. That's not really how it should be done. Okay? I can understand why someone would want to think that way, because if I was a complete bigot, I could just sit down and say, well, blacks are clearly inferior to whites in every single way. Now, since that I've said this, here's the evidence that supports why. Well, okay, people would be like, well, you're a fucking racist. Why should we care about your opinion? Even if the stuff you're saying is true, guess what? It's probably going to be skewed and misleading because you're biased. You kind of got a dog in the fight. Well, okay. So, the point I'm getting at here is, that's why this person shouldn't be believed. But still, don't take my word for it. Let her words go and hang her own self. The ancient Greeks spoke of a mythological society composed entirely of warrior women. The medieval traveler John Mandeville wrote of a place where female rulers never would suffer a man to dwell amongst them. Paradise Island, home of Wonder Woman, was a feminist utopia where no one with a Y chromosome was allowed. Sadly, those places only exist in fiction. But something like this does exist in the real world. It's in a wetland in rural Ohio, and it's full of salamanders. Okay, that's just the first two paragraphs, people. We've already went and kind of got the idea that, yeah, this person is got a stick up their ass when it comes to men, okay? Let's not kid ourselves. But before I go on and go into why this person is full of crap, let me go and read the rest of her article verbatim, because this is priceless. They're pretty incredible, said Robert Denton, a biologist at Ohio State who studies an unusual group of salamander species that literally don't need men. These creatures, all female, reproduce by cloning themselves. To keep their gene pool diverse, they sometimes, quote-unquote, steal sperm left behind on trees and leaves by male salamanders of other species and incorporate that DNA into their offspring. Most sexually reproducing organisms have two sets of chromosomes to make up their genome, one from each parent. But one of these strange salamanders can have between 2 and 5 times that much genetic material lying in wait within her cells. It's as if they have multiple genomes to fall back on, and that's made them incredibly successful. Polyploid salamanders have been around some 6 million years, Denton said, far longer than most other animal species that reproduce asexually. Since a lack of diversity means having a smaller arsenal of genetic variation to fall back on when living conditions change, these groups usually go extinct relatively quickly. In fact, the Amazon women salamanders seem to be better off than their heterosexual counterparts in some respects. In a new study published Monday in the Journal of Zoology, Denton and his colleagues report that the all-female salamanders they studied could regenerate lost limbs 36% faster than other species. If you're living in an Ohio swamp, it seems you're better off without men. The study was conceived by Monica Sakuki, I have no idea how to pronounce that, now a medical student at the University of Cincinnati. At the time, though, she was still an undergrad working in the same lab as Denton. First, Sakuki went into the wetland near Ohio State to collect eggs from both polyploid and ordinary members of the salamander genus Amphibistoma. Once they all reached adulthood, she cut off 40% of each salamander's tail to see how fast it would grow back. Amphibistoma salamanders, like many amphibians, are masters of regeneration. But the polyploid salamanders were the queens of them all. Within 10 weeks, they had brand new, full-length tails. Their sexually reproducing cousins, on the other hand, weren't finished regenerating for another 5 weeks. It makes sense that this might be the case, according to Denton. Polyploid creatures simply have more of the equipment necessary to build back what they've lost. More genomes means more species which produce more RNA, which make proteins that causes a much faster pipeline to producing more tissue, he said. This ability gives them a big leg up from an evolutionary perspective. Salamanders' tails serve more than mere decorative purposes. In the water, tails help them to swim, and on land they can use their tail to distract predators. Being able to regrow their tails in record time after they snapped off by a predator or in some kind of aquatic accident makes it more likely that the all-female salamanders will stay alive to reproduce. They get injured a lot, Sakuki said in news releases. If you can't regenerate, you're dead. Correction, an earlier version of this post incorrectly reported how quickly the tails of all female salamanders grow back. And then it goes on and states that more animals that don't need a man. Now, this gets priceless because let's scroll down. Apparently, the picture of the person doing this article is, of course, a woman. Okay? Now, you can go and get mad at me and say, how sexist that you to say that's a woman! Don't you know that men are feminists too? Yeah, I do know that. I'm saying statistically, it's more likely that when you encounter bullshit off of the internet, the person spouting it is more likely to be a woman. Yes, male feminists exist. That doesn't mean, however, that all feminists, or even the majority of them, are men. Let's go and look at the majority, 80 to 90% of the group, instead of the 10 to 20% outliers, shall we? Still, the point is still the same. That in every article that's about, well, we don't need men. Oh, masculinity. Oh, so fragile. I bathe in male tears, etc., etc., etc. This is kind of standard when it comes to a feminist in general, okay? But stop and think for a moment. If I went and started saying anything bad about women, about how we don't need women, how women are useless, how their only purpose is to go and reproduce, and beyond that, they're a waste of time, effort, and investment, gee, I wonder what would happen. I'd probably be attacked for it. But here's the thing of it. Let's not get into that for now, shall we? Let's, for now, go and just concentrate on the article. The entire reason why this article is misleading, to say the very best, is because, well, for one, stop and think. They're clones, okay? The female lizards, they're all the same. One is a carbon copy of the other. Well, okay, so if one lizard is a carbon copy of the other, then that's actually not a good thing. No, seriously, compared to what an SJW would tell you, everyone being the same is a terrible thing because there is no diversity. Sure, you can go and be lesbian with a severe mental disorder and happen to be some kind of poly-otherkin and goes and sees, goes floating about at random in her daily life and everything else. And you can be as diverse as that if you wanted, or even more so. But as long as your opinion remains the same, as long as that's not diverse, they really don't care. But that's another topic for another time. The point is this here. What's happened is that because there is no diversity, that means they're all the same, which means they all have the same rate of survival. Now, if your survival is very good, that's great. However, if a predator shows up, nom, 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 well, there goes the entire species. They're all the same. And guess what? That means, because they're all the same, they cannot differentiate themselves in order to go and fend off or avoid said predator. It's kind of like species of flightless bird, okay? There was actually a species of bird on this island. I don't remember what it was called, but they once had the ability of flight, but because there were no natural predators, they ended up losing that ability of flight. Then when people came to the island and they brought their cats with them and everything else, well, no natural predators meant when the cats showed up, they were like, I'm not leaving, you leave. And the cat was like, dinner time. Arr! Well, okay, so apparently what happened is that species of bird no longer exists. It went extinct. So to go and sit and say, oh, we're all the same and this is great, and no, it isn't. You're all the same, you're all dead. But it doesn't end there. Pulling right from the article, it actually outright stated to keep their gene pool diverse, they sometimes, quote-unquote, steal sperm left behind on trees and leaves by male salamanders of other species and incorporate that DNA into their offspring. Okay, so here's my question. If they're incorporating DNA from other male salamanders, then it's not really a truly one-gender species, okay? Do you get what I'm getting at? It means because they can sexually reproduce, that's why there's variation, okay? There is some variation going on because male salamanders exist. And why you can sit and say that undoes my previous argument, no, it really doesn't. The argument is still there that being all the same and no diversity and no differences means you're dead. That's true no matter what. These salamanders avoid it because they are males of the species, or at least males of other species, in order to keep the diversity going around. It doesn't stop there either. Going a little further down in their argument, they go and say that, well, female salamanders have more genetic material. Okay. Well, that's great for them, but here's the question I have to ask. When we're talking about a species that can basically clone, bud, or whatever, if we're talking about that, well, okay. Here's the thing I have to ask you now. All this genetic material that is caught up in them and all, that's really great and it works for a time, but it's still the same material. There is nothing new being added to it. Okay? Yeah, it's better material than the male offspring may have, but diversity lays within the male offspring. Keep that in mind. For the female offspring, they can heal quicker, but they're a dead end because even if you can turn out so many clones of yourself and all, well, again, that doesn't go and help any if a predator shows up and those extra genes don't do a bit of good. Also, as this woman goes and states, if you're living in an Ohio swamp, it seems you're better off without men. Well, great. In that case, since you hate men so much, why don't you go and move to an Ohio swamp? No, seriously, just you and a bunch of other women like you move to an Ohio swamp, go and live in that little environment, and let me know how your children turn out. Oh, that's right. You're not salamanders. You're actually human beings. Whoopsie. And you can go and sit and say, well, you're just taking cheap shots now. Well, no, I'm not. Because here's the thing I want you to think about. If you're going to go and sit and talk about, well, there's a species of animals that does good without men, and this means that this species over here that is nothing like it can also do the same thing, that is amazingly stupid. No, seriously, it is amazingly a stupid thing to say. Let's go and back up a little bit, shall we? Let's go and take lions, for example. In the lion community, the woman does all the work. She does the hunting, she does the gathering, she does all this stuff. It's all very low-risk stuff that she's doing, but when it comes to actually defending the group, the male lion will go and take action, okay? So when an actual predator comes up that threatens the pride and all, only the male lion will take action. Now, what this means is, that's because for the male, what he's doing isn't low risk. It's high risk. There's a pretty good chance of him dying. So, to keep him in top condition, that's why there's a bevy of female lions to go and do all the hunting and everything else for him. Now, not only that there, but when a new male lion takes over a pride, the first thing he does is kill off all the offspring of the old lion that was in charge, okay? So, apparently, taking from nature now, what this means is, if you're a woman, you should be working to support the man. The man shouldn't have to work. The man should only exist to go and protect you, your kids, and that's it. Now, you might sit and say, well, we live in such a safe society, that's not ever going to happen. I mean, he's just going to be laying around and lounging off of us. I mean, he's a complete bum. What's he going to be doing? And I'm like, well, okay now, if it's such a safe society and everything else, and he's going to be a complete bum, then why do we need feminism? I thought the world was a dangerous and predatory place if you're a woman. But now you're telling me that it's safe and secure and we don't have to worry about it? I'm getting mixed messages here. And not only that there, I'm only taking what's going on in nature already. Why are you complaining about incorporating it? No, it's okay to do this when we go and sit and say, well, men are useless, we don't need them. Well, I'm saying, well, men shouldn't have to work and kill themselves, that women should have to do it. In fact, a man should have multiple women. I'm not saying wives, I'm not saying anything about marrying them, I'm just saying women. And his only goal is to go and protect them and to get them pregnant. And that's it. That's all he should have to do. And a lot of women are like, well, that's terrible. The stuff we're working for, this is two different species. How dare you go and bring this up? And I'm like, well, okay then. What's that mean about your argument? And it doesn't stop there either. Did you know that some species of animals, that right after their kid's born, the first thing their kids will do is eat the mother? Literally, for food. And now, I'll be honest. I don't expect a little baby to eat a fully grown woman. And I don't imagine a fully grown woman to sit around and let that happen. But here's what I'm thinking. Since we're bringing stuff from the animal kingdom into human society, how about this here? When a woman has a kid, the man gets the choice to kill her. Okay? How about that? Now, you can sit and say, well, that's misogynistic. Fine, whatever. This entire article I'm reviewing is misandric, so it really don't matter. Hey, she's a woman. What does she care? Well, I'm a guy. Why should I care about what affects women? I'm a guy. Same argument. And now when I go and say, let's go and kill the woman and all, the guy's got a choice, okay? If a kid was born and the guy didn't want it, I'm not going to say that he has to do it. I'm just saying that's on the table. That's a choice he can take. And what I mean by this is, when you go and sit down and think about it, well, the wife technically has the power to end the man's life right there. Because, think about it, she can go and collect child support. In fact, I've actually heard cases where the woman actually demanded more child support than was the husband's yearly income. This stuff actually happens, people. I'm not making this up. And not only this here, but a number of women will just say, I want more money. They don't say why they want more money, but they want more money. And the courts are usually glad to give it to them. And so what happens is, we've gone from a man having a house, having a job, having a means of transportation. Now he doesn't have any of that. He's homeless, he has no means of getting back and forth, and he's sleeping on the street, and he probably lost his job. And yet, here it is, we go and call him a worthless bum because this woman essentially ruined him. She ruined his life entirely for her own benefit. And I'm just like, well, okay, if that's how it is, then a man, if he didn't want the kid, if, hey, we go and say, hey, it's a woman's body, it's a woman's choice. If you're a man, shut the hell up. Well, how is aborting the kid in the kid's best interest? Tell me that now. No, think about it. We go and say the man should pay for the kid because, hey, guess what? That's in the best interest of the kid. And if it turns out he's not the father, it don't matter. He still has to pay because it's in the best interest of the kid. But the woman can terminate said kid, and that's okay. Well, okay, if the woman can abort the kid, then the man should be able to financially abort it. He should no longer be responsible for paying anything. But since we don't want to do that, let's go and make it a little more interesting, shall we? How about when the woman has a kid, we go and say, if he didn't want it, and he didn't have the choice to do this or that or whatever, then he at the very least has the right to determine whether the woman continues to exist or not. Simple as that. If the man didn't want the kid and he was brought into it as an unwilling victim, well, he can go and just say, well, the woman's going to die. She had a kid, now she's got to die. It's all part of the animal kingdom, baby. We're just taking what works for the animals and we're incorporating it into what works for humans. And as a man, this sounds kind of good to me because imagine what's going to happen. We're going to suddenly see a decrease in unwanted kids. We're going to see a decrease in people being screwed over by the court system. And because I'm a guy, this sounds very good to me. and again, a lot of you are going to sit and say, oh, misogyny, misogyny, my soggy knees, how terrible. Well, okay, fine, but keep in mind, was not this entire article I talked about, he was talking about salamanders? Before she even talked about the damn lizard, was she not talking about some Greek island ruled by women and a female civilization where the rulers of this island would not welcome anyone with a Y chromosome? And did she not go on and say, well, sadly those places only exist in fiction? Well, okay. So, if you're going to sit and tell me I am such a terrible, horrible person, then, really, what does that make this person whose article I just reviewed? Consistency, people. That's all I'm asking for.